Alright guys, before I get into the main commentary, I just want to go ahead and say that I'm very sorry for saying for I don't know what reason. I used to not do that in commentaries, and because I've psyched off and quit doing them, for some reason that little speech impediment has come back. As you can see, I just did it right there. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, hope you guys learned something, and peace out and keep on gaming. What is going on, guys? So today I'm going to be talking about the Battlefield 4 beta. It came out today, and I put about 7 hours of playtime into it, so I've had enough time to actually tell what's been going on. So with that being said, everything that I'm about to say is either glitches, things that I have noticed that are useful hints and tips and tricks, or opinions about the game. So let me go ahead and get started. First things first, if you are near a friendly, you will throw them the med pack, and it's not a med pack, it is a single little packet, and I'll get to that in a second. And by the way, if it sounds like I'm reading this off of a list, it's because I actually am. I typed up a list of everything that I needed to talk about, and I'm going off that. So the ACWR, which was brought back from Battlefield 3, has a sight glitch to where you can't see through the sight. It only happens when you're on iron sights, and it seems to be fairly common. It happens almost every single time I pulled up the sight, so I just kind of started to hip fire with it, and that basically solved the problem. If there's too many people shooting at once, it will cut out some gun sounds, and it's usually your own that's going to cut out. So don't freak out if for some reason all of a sudden you hear like 4 guys shooting at you and you start shooting, but there's no gun sounds coming off your end. That's actually just the game trying to compensate with everything going on. The destructible environment works flawlessly. However, when large buildings collapse, especially the one on Conquest, I think that's the game mode, the really big one that was in the preview, that one collapsed, it almost crashes the server. It causes almost everybody to lag and stand still for 5 to 6 seconds, and it's a pretty big problem. I think it needs to be patched. Gun sounds actually sound really good. They don't sound like anything from Battlefield 3. The comparison I'm going to be making the most throughout this is Battlefield Bad Company 2, because to me that's what it's most similar to. It plays a lot closer to that than it does Battlefield 3, and to me that's a really good thing, but to some of you it may not be. So the SIG P226, which is the basic handgun, is literally a cut and paste of the one that's from Medal of Honor Warfighter. And if you've ever played a Medal of Honor game, you know exactly what it looks like. So when you play Battlefield 4 beta, you will see that they're very similar. The gun note or the sound is a little bit lower pitch, but other than that, they shoot almost exactly the same. You can shoot this a little bit faster though, and that's about the only real differences. So, like I said earlier, instead of a med kit, it's a single health pack, which can only be used for one person. And it heals to max health in about 5 seconds, and you can throw one about every second and a half. If you jump right before you die, and this is assuming you're dying, you tend to rocket off in the direction you were jumping. So your dead body will. It's really weird, but it's kind of fun at the same time. The whole game is very fluid. I would suggest turning up your sensitivity a little bit once you get into the game, because it is on, I think, like 20% default, which is very, very low. The controls are also odd for default. They're not the same as Battlefield 3 default, if I remember correctly, so that might take some getting used to, but it's not that different. I picked it up in about 5 minutes. Right off the bat, I could tell that the PP2000, as soon as I unlocked it, is going to be a powerhouse for Engineer. It is so unbelievably powerful. Especially in long ranges, when you can just switch over to single fire, it's still only a 4-shot kill. So, very easily, it can be used throughout almost all ranges. So, the dual scopes on the LMG work okay, but they need to have a little bit of a touch-up done to them. They are a little bit furry and blurry and fuzzy, excuse me, especially the main one, the little red dot, not the zoomed in, but just the red dot. It's a little bit blurry, so if you're aiming down longer ranges, you can't exactly pinpoint something. Jumping really helps when shooting someone from the hip, And jumping while zoomed in causes you to zoom out, and also you stop firing if you jump while you're zoomed in, just to let you know. So the AK-5C, which is one of the 2 carbine rifles that are unlocked right now, is devastating once you use the recoil pattern. The recoil pattern's almost straight up, and I've used almost every single gun available so far, except for the second sniper, and you can clearly tell that it stands out above the rest. It stands out more than the PP2000 does for the engineer. I think mainly because you can actually use it with all the classes. However, I don't actually think it's overpowered because a lot of the classes have a specific weapon that is really good with, and the rest of them aren't that great. So the XM25 Airburst, which is one of the support kits, attachments or items, I guess you would call them, it needs a buff. Either the damage needs to have a small increase, or the lock on, or like a lock on ability needs to be introduced. So far, I haven't seen that. And the reason why I'm saying this is because if you shoot somebody flat out and you're not hitting them in the body, it's almost a 3 to 4 hit kill, which in game modes like Domination, where there are no vehicles to take down, it's practically useless. RPGs are basically a one-shot kill if you hit anywhere near them. So say about 15 feet, I don't know how much that would be in game, but it's actually a pretty wide area that you can shoot them and they will still die. However, if you shoot over longer ranges, there seems to be a damage drop off that is pretty significant, so it could take 2 to 3 if you're shooting at somebody really long range with one. For some reason, the mannequins on the bottom floor of the map, you cannot shoot through their torsos. You can shoot through their arms just fine and their legs, but I could not shoot through their torsos. There were a couple guys that were sitting behind them, and for some reason my shots weren't registering. And I went over to them and shot through them, and my bullets weren't appearing through the other side of them. And I also asked somebody else in my squad if that had happened to them, and they also said it was true too. The vehicles that spawn naturally, which I'm talking about the ones you cannot drive, so not like tanks and helicopters, but all the other ones, they don't cause a very large explosion radius, so it's very hard to get a kill with them. And if it's a car and the car alarm goes off, there's not much you can do to disable the alarm. You can blow it up, and sometimes that doesn't even do anything for it. So you might just be stuck with a really loud car alarm for the rest of the game, which is pretty annoying. Vehicles who are, people who are good at flying and driving tanks in Battlefield 3 are going to do really well in this game also, because not much has changed. I think driving is switched over to the left-hand side instead of the right triggers, but that's about the only switch. Don't quote me on that, because I never really drove tanks. I drove a lot of jets. Well, I flew a lot of jets, but I never really drove tanks, so I can't really speak for that part. The red dot helps tremendously with almost all weapons. The Cobra sight not so much, but for like the American and the I want to say the French weapons is the other one that's mainly prominent. Those are the red dot sights on those really help. So if you're reloading and then you switch to your sidearm and your magazine is already inserted into the gun, when you switch back to the gun that you were reloading, instead of you putting another magazine in, it'll leave off where you left it, and that's only when you insert a fresh magazine. So basically the only time that's going to happen is when you completely run out of ammo and you're putting in a fresh clip. Every class is extremely usable. The snipers sound amazing and have little bullet drop over long ranges compared to Battlefield 3, so that's something to get used to. The compensators on the weapons, which is I want to say it's the equivalent of a flash hider, but I'm not entirely sure. Those help a lot, especially on the carbines. Carbines, shotguns, and the DMRs are available to all classes. The motion sensor is back from Bad Company 2, and it's just as effective as it was then. Throwing down a med kit at your feet when you were camping almost allows you to double your life, and what I mean by that is that if you throw one down and say you're capturing a point on domination, when they start shooting you, it doesn't really kick in until you're at about 50 health. So you're basically going to have a regen on, which means that if you're any kind of a decent shot, you're going to get the kill, and you're still going to get the health regen to full health. So it's really useful when capping points. Ammo is very, very precious unless you're running with a squad or a supporter who can actually throw you down ammo. I found myself running out of ammo a lot. You can get about 2 kills out of a magazine if you burst fire, but if you just hold down the trigger, you're lucky to get 1.5. The knife needs to let you move a little bit faster when you're running with it out. As far as I can tell, there isn't any kind of speed boost, which to me is a little bit disappointing because it's not that effective whatsoever. And here is my conclusion. So overall, I think that the game is very playable. However, I think that it's going to take a little bit of time to get used to it. Personally, it took me about 20 minutes of playing before I actually realized that I was playing Battlefield again. It kind of plays like Call of Duty at first, which is really weird because it's usually the opposite. It plays a lot more like Bad Company 2 than Battlefield 3. And if you want to get an actual feel for the gunfights, play Domination because there is no vehicles. The vehicles, in my opinion, are way too powerful, especially with no one on your team who is trying to do anything about them. As it sits, today is the very first day of the open beta, which is October 1st, and it's going to be available to everybody on October 4th. If you want to get into it before October 4th, you need to either have Medal of Honor Warfighter Limited Edition or one other thing, which I do not know. I know for PC, you just have to have it pre-ordered, and then you're good to go. From the 7 hours that I put into the game, I think that this game is definitely going to be worth the $60 price tag, even if they didn't patch anything, because it's a very solid game. The things that I have seen so far are very minute, and the weapons that they happen with are not exactly good compared to other ones. And I urge you guys to take this first impressions and opinions video into consideration about the game. I just want you guys to remember that these are my opinions and my observations over my gameplay over the first day of the beta being out. So take that with a grain of salt. Excuse me. But with that being said, expect more Battlefield 4 content from me in the future for sure. It's a great game, and I am going to thoroughly enjoy playing it for probably until the beta ends. And until next time, guys, peace out and keep on gaming.